Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, James Anderson, and my guest this week is Andrew Geller, who you might know as the Gildz from Twitter. And Andrew is a overall champion. He's currently in the mix for some other overall titles. Season's early, but I wanted to have Andrew on to kind of discuss what it's like trying to go for the overall prize in these NFBC contests. Andrew, thanks for joining me. How are you doing?
Hey, doing well, James. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun meeting you in Vegas this past spring and drafting against you. And I wanted to just kind of start with sort of what's your background playing in high stakes fantasy baseball leagues, and like when did you start? What got you into it?
Yeah, so I used to do like the points leagues with buddies of mine. I think we were playing on CBS at the time, and we did those leagues for years. And I was always the guy that was like picking up free agents. We had like the free ad drop, so I was always the guy picking up the guys before everybody else. People got tired of playing with me for the most part, but then I saw the NFBC kind of on Twitter, I think one time. I'm like, what is NFBC? I never even heard of it. So I remember going to the site and just, reading about it and Roto. I never played Roto before that first year. So I was just clueless on how it all worked. I'm like, wait, it's a running total of stats. Am I 1-0 after week one if my stats are better than my teammate? I was just lost. So it was all new to me, and I kind of just got hooked like immediately. And that was 2014. And ever since then, it's just been all about the Roto fantasy world. So
Do you play other sports, or do you just do baseball?
I do football also. Did pretty well. I played the NFBC, FFPC. I think I finished 4th or 5th overall one year in the RotoWire OC on the football side too. So I'm in both pretty hardcore. So I'm just starting to get back into the football mindset a little bit now. Doing a couple drafts. Have one later tonight actually, but
Wow.
This is actually a late start. I'm usually drafting football by mid-May or so. So I've just been consumed by baseball this whole time, and it's kind of I put football like on the back burner for a little bit, but I'm about to go balls to the wall there as well. So,
well, good luck with your football prep and your football draft tonight.
Thank you.
What are your best overall finishes to date? We'll keep this one to baseball.
Yeah, so baseball. People think that 2020 season, that's when I came in 2nd overall, but I actually 2017, I cashed in the overall. I had 2 cashes, I believe, in the overall. I led that overall that season. I had like 5 OCs. I think I finished 1st or 2nd in 4 of them. Then 2018 was kind of a down year, and then 2019, I think I won a little bit, but then 2020 was the start of the Gildz Era in the NFBC. So that was the COVID year. And I remember being pretty down on baseball. I said, I can't not draft a team. So I threw one bullet into the OC. It was very late, maybe, a week before the season started even. And ended up getting 2nd overall with that one bullet. So that was a nice season. And then in 2021, I backed that up with a 4th overall finish in the OC and a 9th overall in the main event that year. And then last year I took it down 1st overall in the OC. So that's 3 straight top 5 finishes in that contest, which I'm pretty sure is the biggest fantasy contest out there now, right? At least FAAB wise. I'm not counting the draft champions, but it's pretty crazy.
That sounds right. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah, and I always say that I do it kind of on a minimal amount of teams. I'm not entering 20, 30 teams every year. I do 4, 5, 6 is usually my max. So to have that success, with a limited number of bullets is pretty impressive, I think.
Do you prefer the 12s or have you just had more success in the 12s?
Well, I didn't start the main, I feel like, till like 2018, I believe was my first year. And I only had one team. I did a couple of years with just one team. Didn't have much success until the 2021 year. 12s, I don't know. I just have a nice feel for that format. I know, you have a lot more leeway than you do in the 15s. And, losing one player is not going to crush you, really. There's ways to make up gaps where you really can't in a 15-team main event. I do love the main, though. I think it's by far the most challenging contest there is right now. So I love it. It's just two different animals, and it's just kind of catering to both formats.
So when you're very competitive in the overall contests, is that something you're gunning for on draft day? Like, how different would your teams be, I guess, if you were, or how much do you even factor in winning your league versus competing in the overall when you're drafting?
I factor it. I'd be lying if I said the overall wasn't always top of mind when I'm drafting these teams. I'm always looking for those guys in the middle rounds, even late rounds, that have a chance to pop and hit that that jackpot late in drafts, and even closers. I know I've talked about this ad nauseum, but in these overall contests, I don't like to invest heavily in closers that early, especially in the 12s. I just feel, from like a game theory perspective, like if you're battling against 2,000 other teams, you have to come away with some sort of edge, right? So my mindset is, all right, listen, I'm going to try to hit on closers, right? I don't want to invest early capital in closers. I'll take the bats early. And then if I hit on those closers, I'm in pretty good shape, with the way I feel like I can draft and, my in-season managing. So, if you don't hit on them, you're probably screwed. But I feel like in the 12s, there's also room to improve in saves department, a lot more so than 15s, where you see leagues right now where guys have 6-7 saves in your leagues, and there's just no one out there to get. So I've always been a proponent of waiting on closers. I'll take one of the top guys, right, like the top 8 or so. I'll take one of them in the top 7-8 rounds, but after that, I'm just completely fading them until late mid-teens and just take 3-4 of the guys. Hope you hit on 2. If not, you hit on 1 late, and then you kind of work around that. But I was never the first round hater, second round class A guys. At least in the OC, I wasn't.
Yeah, that's interesting. The difference between the 15 versus the 12. And you might even, like, in some 12s, there might even be a guy out there in your league who is like a part-time closer, and they're just sitting out there, and you can get them for. Yeah. I was just talking about how in the 12s, there's part-time closers just sitting there on the waiver wire sometimes.
Yeah, and I always say that too. Like, people say you can't FAAB saves or whatever. You can, right? It's just not something people like doing, right? But yeah, you see in these OCs, teams start falling out in July, even earlier. You might get a closer for $2-3, right? When half the league's paying attention. So that's kind of what I did too when I won it all last year. I had Romano, who was my one main closer, and I kind of just dabbled here and there, got enough 30 saves from just rotating guys in and out, and you got enough at the end. But that's just the way I see it, and so far it's worked. That's kind of the strategy I've employed every year since I've been in this.
So I know you got a top 10 team in the main event overall right now. How many FAAB leagues did you do this year total, and how many of them do you think you're in with a fighting shot for an overall prize?
So I did 7 OCs, which I think is the most I've done. And I did 3 mains. And I did the ultimate. I split the ultimate with Big Bob Cramatola. So that's 11 FAAB leagues. Doing pretty well in most of them right now. I'm first in 2 of the 3 mains. I think I'm first in 2 or 3 OCs. I don't have an OC I have 1 below 3rd place, I think. So I mean, it's looking like another big year. But contender-wise, I think I have the OC sitting around 15 right now, I think, the last I checked. That main, I feel like, has a chance around 10. I got the bats. Judge hurts right now, but that team is huge in power. So I feel like I'll be able to kind of tread water till he's back. It's got great pitching, I think, balanced offense. A couple good closers. I got Class A there, actually. I got Alex Slang, who's been pretty good, albeit the last couple of hiccups, but it's looking good. Knock on wood. Just kind of keep treading water. Any day that you don't go down in a main is a nice day, whether it's a couple points. Whereas the OC, you could drop, 600-700 points in a night, and it's just completely different animal.
How much do you check standings this time of year? I mean, I know whenever I've got a team that's doing really well, I'm just watching it all the time. But for you, I mean, you've had a lot of teams do really well. Does it get kind of boring, or are you still just kind of glued to it when you've got a really good team?
Yeah, I'm pretty glued to it, especially on the contenders. Every start you kind of checking in and seeing if you have a starter going. Like the 1 OC I have, I'm really down in home runs, where every homer now is, I don't know, 130, 40 points. So, I mean, you hit a few of those in a day, all of a sudden you're up 300-400 points. But I mean, really, until I don't really take them too seriously, probably for another month-ish or so, when the ratios start to solidify and stabilize. I think it's, mid-July-ish is really, if you're up there in the overall and you have the goods and you see that your team, is not just, you can tell if you have the guys, if you have the ammo, if you will. But if you're healthy and you're up there and you know what you're doing around mid-July-ish, there's a good chance you're going to stay there the rest of this. You'll fluctuate up and down a little bit, but from the teams I've had that have done well, if I'm up there in late July, I usually stay up there. So
you mentioned the main event team that's in the top 10 being really solid for power. Is that kind of a theme? Are there certain categories that a classic Gildz team is going to be very proficient in, and other areas where you're generally going to be more mid-pack, or is every team just a different animal?
I would say, powered speed. I always go early. I don't like taking power early on unless it's prodigious Pete Alonso, Aaron Judge, something like that, where they could hit you 50 homers, right? So for instance, Devers and Riley, I was off of this year, not because I don't like them, they're great players, but I just didn't see that, I don't know, massive power upside, right? They'll hit you 30, maybe 35. They don't offer much speed at all. So, I was always waiting for the Alex Bregman types, 60 picks later, 40, whatever, 50 picks later. I just didn't see the value there in the second round. But yeah, for the most part, I'm not taking a guy if he's giving me no speed, unless he offers just crazy power where, that one guy can lead you in the power department. So, yeah, I mean, that's really it. Speed, power early for bats. If I'm going pitching, obviously I want, the high Ks early if I can. And that's really how I build my teams, and just try to find value in the middle rounds and, try to bob and weave in that draft room. And that's it. You just got to adjust too. I feel like, sometimes owners in these leagues, with that 1 minute clock, it kind of frazzles them a little bit in draft, and maybe they take a guy that they didn't want to take, or they reach for a guy that they shouldn't. And, you just got to be comfortable in that draft room. And I feel like at this point, I feel pretty comfortable there.
Do you think there's anything you're doing that other drafters, or maybe even just in-season managers, aren't doing that helps with contending for overalls? I know that there's, I'll just let you answer that question.
Yeah, I think outside of just drafting, I feel like team construction is probably my strong suit. Is, I just have a feel for building teams. I feel like a lot of people are smart in the game, but when it comes down to building an actual team, they have issues doing that. And I feel like constructing, that's definitely my strong suit. And at least in the OCs too, I'm churning and burning my rosters like crazy. Like on that team that's in top 10 or whatever overall, I dropped like 6 guys on this previous wire just because, I'm trying to get those at bats and just trying to manipulate whatever I can every single week. I don't, get tied to guys too often. And whereas in the main, you can't do that, right? You got a guy playing regular, every day at bats. He's somewhat productive. It's a guy you kind of got to hold on to. In the OC, I mean, I'm dumping guys like every week. I'm just recycling guys. So I would say don't get too tied to any players on your team, especially if they're not elite, top flight producers. Always look to improve in every category. I'm always looking, not only at the standings, but where in those standings I can, gain weekly, right? So like I was short in power in the OC. I picked up like 4 power bats this week and just threw them in there and just kind of, any deficiency you see in those categories, just attack them every week. Keep attacking them. The last OC last year, I was in June, I want to say, I was like bottom 3rd in the tournament in steals. I was like in dire straits. But that was like the one category that I was behind in. So the entire rest of the season, I'm just adding guys and trying to, scout the minors, your Bubba Thompsons, those kind of guys, just picking them up for dollars, throwing them in there. And the next thing you know, by the end of the season, I stashed O'Neal Cruz also in that league. But I was, 85, 90 percentile in steals. So it's just one of those things where you kind of keep at wherever you're deficient in those standings, just keep plugging away at that. And, eventually you should hit your targets.
Do you remember the 4 power hitters you picked up this week? Just so people can kind of like get an idea of like the caliber guy you're talking about.
So I picked up Jock Peterson. I picked up who unfortunately was facing 2 lefties early in the week, so I had to sit him. Picked up Rooker off Oakland, who's been mashing it. I think he's got 12 or 13 homers already. In the minors, he showed a lot of pop too. I mean, he's probably not going to give you much in the average department, but he's a guy that I think could hit you, 25, 30 homers. Gary Sanchez, I picked up as well. He went, I think the runner-up was like $1, so nobody really wanted him. And I think one more power bat. Give me a second, I'll tell you. Sanchez. So the other one, sorry for delay here.
This is great.
I picked up Jock, Rucker, and Danny Jansen, who I was stashing. Yeah, 2 catchers exactly. Actually, I needed power, but I actually dropped Cal Raleigh, who hit a homer last night, which was fun to see. But, he's been doing nothing for just, I don't know, the last month, like literally nothing. He had those 2 monster games where he hit like 2 homers, I think, right? And he had like 4 or 5 RBIs. And that was like his whole production, like the last month. So I basically dropped him for the same guy and Gary Sanchez, but we'll see. I have Eloy on that team. Like I said, Jock, Acuna's on that team. So, there's power there. Gorman, he's also been pretty lousy of late, but, that's another power bat you could stick in there. So we'll see. Yeah.
When you're making the decision to go from Cal Raleigh to Gary Sanchez, are you like, what type of data are you looking at to sort of, or are you just looking at like, this guy's hot and this guy's not, and I don't love Raleigh, so I'm going to make the swap? Like how granular are you getting in terms of making that decision of swapping those 2 out?
You just nailed it. That was my thought process there. It's like, okay, he's playing, he's DHing Sanchez too. I mean, he's playing pretty much every day, right? So I'm just going to ride that out and see how long that goes. Obviously the floor is terribly low on Sanchez, but Cal Raleigh can hit you 200 also. I mean, they're pretty much the same player in my eyes. So we'll see. I was just going to ride the heater. Sanchez, he has power. We all know he has power. It's everything else that he lacks in. But if he's DHing and playing in the middle of that lineup, I mean, he should be starting in every league right now. I mean, until he, goes 0 for 30, which is probably coming at some point. But just play that heater.
What would be like? I don't think I've ever. Do you recall like a time where you've churned like say double-digit catchers in a season on a team like that?
No, I really haven't. I've actually had pretty good success in catcher, and it's even last year I had Murphy and I think Darno actually last year, which is funny this year, but. Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate, I think. I'm not one of these guys that waits until like the end of draft to pick up 2 lousy Jacob Stallings types because they just hurt you. I never really understood that in these drafts where, maybe you go in the middle rounds, you get like a Keibert Ruiz or something who's, hit you 250, 260, right? He's not going to kill you, maybe give you 15 homers. Like to me, that's worth it versus a complete zero or a negative at the catcher position. So, yeah, for those, I loved Sal Perez, his price this year. Got him in a few nice spots. Jonah Heim, I hit on those 2 mains that are doing really well. Nice. He's on both of those. So, it takes some, luck hitting on some of these guys in the right spots for sure. And a catcher, if you hit on a late catcher, I mean, that's a huge boon to your team and especially for the overall.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Jonah Heim, that makes sense.
It's been a beast, Jonah Heim.
You have the Heim, Semien stack on at least one of those teams, right?
Yeah, it's funny you brought up Semien. He's on. So I was looking at that the other day. Every one of my big teams, like I have like 3 or 4, like doing well, real big. He's on every single one of the teams. So I'm riding with Marcus and Jonah for sure. They're big parts of my teams this year, and Semien, I mean, he's just been amazing.
I've got so much Semien regret because I wanted him. Like he wasn't a fade or anything,
right?
And I just didn't get him.
He was going so cheap. Like he was going. I got him in a 4th in a main, like the middle 4th round. I mean, like this is crazy.
I think like every player I wanted was going in the 4th round this year. Like I just wanted like I didn't want anyone who was going in the 3rd, and I wanted everyone who was going in the 4th, and at least if I'm remembering that right, or maybe it's stretched even to like the back half of the 2nd. I wasn't that in on anyone.
I couldn't understand his discount though. I was trying to think through that. I mean, he's done it now for a few years, so I don't know what owners were so leery of with him. I mean, he's a proven commodity at that point, and you're getting a 5 category producer in round 4 in the 60s in some of these. So yeah, it's wild.
Where do you look for upside in a draft? Like, are you kind of taking your shots in the back half of the draft, knowing that you're going to be dropping a bunch of those guys anyways? Do you go after like a big upside guy that might be going in the 3rd or 4th round, or is it just kind of player dependent?
So I'd say it's more like the middle rounds. I try looking. I'm a big proponent of like the high pedigree guys that fail early. Like Kalanick was a guy I've been on him for every year, but those guys with high pedigrees that get off to rough starts to their careers, kind of owners just kind of give up on them. And I'm like, these guys have the skills, they just haven't tapped into them yet. So, I was always clicking Kalanick's name in drafts this year. He's on both of those big mains as well. But yeah, any guys that have shown, production also, even if they're, veterans and they had a shaky year and they're discounted pretty heavily in these drafts, those are guys I'm always targeting and, just trying to find that value where it drops. But yeah, no, I like to hit those high upside guys, in the middle, maybe into the teen rounds of drafts. Josh Jung's another guy where, he was pretty he dropped pretty heavily in most of these drafts, right? He had the rough start last year. Another high pedigree guy. I'm like, you bet on these guys in year 2, it's usually a good bet in fantasy, and we're seeing that play out this year.
Yeah, I was talking about Josh Young on the radio earlier today. Like, I think I remember like him and Tristan Casas were going kind of right next to each other. And I was just sort of talking about just how vastly different, like if you choose Doré versus choosing Doré there.
Right. Yeah, no, there's definitely a lot of swing and miss in those guys, but if you hit, right, I mean, those are big values for sure.
Do you look at, do you look at the back half of your roster, maybe the back 10 rounds as picks where you need to get a contributor, or just picks where you're just trying to hit on something, or just kind of a mix?
I would probably say contributors too. Like I'm trying to kind of lengthen my staff in those later rounds, and where most people, they're taking the higher upside arms. I'd rather take like, just stable arms there that, like Stroman is one guy I have a lot of. Like nobody wants to Marcus Stroman. I mean, the odds are he's going to pitch you good ratios, right? The Ks are lacking there, but I mean, that's a guy that's going to give you 180 plus innings at solid ratios. He's not going to strike out a lot of guys, but that's why you take those early strikeout artists, right? You got to balance out your team somehow. So I'm taking those boring, innings eaters late, and just to kind of stabilize the staff some. And if they hit, like Stroman's having a crazy year right now. So if you end up hitting on those boring older vets, you're going to have a big year.
I also think people just sort of like, I hate the way people talk about upside, because like Marcus Stroman had upside, obviously, based on what he's doing.
Right.
Like Eduardo Rodriguez, before he got hurt, was killing it. Like Nestor Cortez last year with like Miles Mikolas, Merrill Kelly, guys like that. Like
it's the case.
Everyone just talks about these guys like they're just, well, there's no upside there. But there is.
If they don't strike out 230 guys, it's like they don't have any upside, right? But it's like ratios, people, they don't, put enough stock into ratios, and that's 2/5 or half of the ratios for starters at least. So you got to stabilize those ratios, right? It's not just all about the strikeouts, and we're seeing that with Strider. I mean, right now it's like. I'm looking at he's on my OC too. Like I want him to do well. It's funny, but it's just that he's giving you the strikeout, but not giving you anything else. So it's like, where are we supposed to value him right now? And I'm seeing people saying #1 pitcher rest of the season. Why? He's got 100 innings almost right after this start. How many innings is he going? He threw 130 last year. No, sorry, he's around 80 innings, I want to say, after this start. So how many more innings? 100 total, 180 max. Like, is he going to go more than that? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mentioned him to you. I saw you tweet about him, and he obviously got kind of lit up today.
Oh man,
I think the ERA now is
over 4,
north of 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So who? Like, I think my easy answer would just be that if we were doing a draft today, I would just not be one of the first 5 or 6 people to take a starting pitcher. But like, if you had to be the person that said, this is my SP1 the rest of the way, who are your candidates? Who would you sort of settle on there?
Yeah, I'm still going Cole. He's reliable. He's going to give you those innings. The guy is as durable as any pitcher out there. He's going to give you 210, innings, maybe more. Who knows? He never gets hurt. Knock on wood. But he's not going to give you the Ks that Strider's going to give you. He's probably not going to give you the ratios that McClanahan is going to give you. But he's going to give you enough, right, where you're throwing him out there, and he's out there every 5th day. And end of the year, he's probably going to have close to 20 wins, 200 plus Ks. And it's like, there's value there, So to me, I'm still going Cole rest of the season. I'd probably go McClanahan too. And then 3 kind of gets tricky there. I feel like Gossman's up there. I mean, he's been, he's a little shaky last start, but overall he's been amazing. Yeah, but definitely I think Cole, McClanahan would probably be 2. And at this point,
I might go with Luis Castillo.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue. I mean, he's been amazing, and this was a guy that was going, not long ago. He was going in the second round in these main events, right? We forget about, how good he was those years in Cincinnati. So, yeah, I would not fight you on that either.
Yeah, Seattle Castillo has been very, very good.
Amazing.
And it's just, I would almost be, I think Cole's a good answer too. It's almost like you're just trying to not screw up with that pick.
Right. And that's why I like Cole, because,
yeah,
he's just safe. He's the definition of safe. And in this pitching climate right now, it's like, you got to close your eyes every time a starter goes out. I don't know if you can remember a worse pitching year, as a whole, than we're seeing this year. I mean, it's just landmine after landmine. It's just, you just got to pray, close your eyes and pray.
I think, a lot of my good teams have really good pitching, just kind of, getting lucky and just having some decent calls on guys like Tyler Wells and stuff like that. But, it's scary, especially when you have for instance, if you have Max Scherzer, next week he's got a 2-step in Houston and then in Boston, I believe. That one, you're not going to bench Max Scherzer, but you're also you're just hoping to kind of emerge from there with, maybe a win and 10 Ks, and hopefully it just doesn't completely destroy your ratios.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a strange case. I mean, at times he looks dominant, and then at times he looks like he's completely washed. So I don't know what's going on there with Max. I don't think he's nearly as bad as we've seen lately, but yeah, the days of ace Max, top 5 starter, I think are long past us.
What do you do with how do you use projections both in your prep and during the season? What's your sort of approach to how they sort of affect who you're going to draft and then who you're going to start each week?
So we had a discussion on this on Twitter actually recently. Well,
Andrew's dog is running wild.
She's crazy. Relax.
Wow. Now we got a 3-person pod.
Yeah. She's a little high. She's still a puppy. So projections, we were talking about this on Twitter. Yeah, I use them a lot, during draft season, right? Prepping for drafts and whatnot, and just building my teams. They're super important, I think. And I put a lot of research into them, and even while drafting, I'm using them to build my teams and whatnot. But during the course of the season, I don't use them that often. And I feel I don't know. I feel like a lot of them are off kind of on the rest of the season outlooks. And it's a lot of, I don't know exactly the algorithms these all use and playing time. I know the playing time, they manually enter those. We've established that. But yeah, I've noticed a lot of discrepancies for what I perceive to be, realistic projections for the rest of the season. So once I see that and I'm like, why am I, if I don't agree with it, why am I putting much stock in it? So I don't even look at them, to be honest. I really don't. But preseason and during draft time, I'm 100% using them. And I think they're a great tool, actually. And they could really help you build the team, the balance you need, the category juice. So yeah, that's kind of how I use projections. What's
been your approach to FAAB this year? I know you got Taj Bradley in some places. What other big buys did you make? And what's your leftover cash looking like in your 12s and your 15s?
Not much. That's for every league I'm in. I think I'm around $100 in FAAB, if not less, in pretty much every league right now. I went big early. Taj, I went, in the mains 350-ish, around 35%, I want to say. Zach Neto was a big bid, that was not a good one. Who else? Edward Julian, I spent a fair amount on, which is also not a good one. I'm one of these guys. I'm super aggressive on the wire. I'm not, especially early on, because I want to be able to maximize that player's stats, right? So if you get a guy in April, he's so much more valuable than getting a guy, end of July. So to me, they're worth more. I should be bidding more. So I'm always okay overpaying, sometimes crazy overpaying. And it's funny when you see everyone posting their Twitter screenshots of efficient Twitter bids. I'm like, I don't even care. If I want a guy, like I'm fine overbidding extremely for the guy. To me, the amount of FAAB money at the end of the season that actually produces for your team is probably a pretty low percentage of your total FAAB. So if I see a difference maker on there, I'm fine overspending as long as I get the guy. Efficiency is not part of the Gildz repertoire, especially. So you're never going to see me on those high efficiency owner FAAB bids for sure.
Well, I'm glad I didn't post my Royce Lewis bids from a couple of weeks ago, because I was probably on average like 150 more than the runner-up bid.
That's not bad. You got him then, at least, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. Do you kind of look at FAAB as it's kind of like an actual auction where you don't, some people just lose an auction league at the auction table because of how they spend their money, and you can't take FAAB with you. So, like, at least in the case of the Royce Lewis bids, like I knew Elly was coming. I didn't want to get Royce in all the leagues that I got him, but I also wanted to get at least one of those two with the big money I had left, because sitting here with like $600 today wouldn't be all that useful. I would have kind of missed my window, or at least that was kind of how I was thinking of it.
Yeah, and that's the disadvantage of going after guys early, right? Is like I was never in the Elly or Royce bid. So, but again, it's what, middle of June, and now you're starting to reap the benefits. Whereas if you hit on a guy in April, I got 2.5 months of production up to those points. So, I mean, there's pros and cons of spending early. If you miss out on the guy early, you might suffer. You might be playing catch up in your league. But if you overspend and the guy, on Zach Neto, or who's been, very pedestrian, I mean, that's money that was not well spent. So it's kind of a catch-22 in that respect. So
if you said you basically got like $100, give or take, in most of your leagues, what's like do you kind of, are you very meticulous of like, I can't really spend much more than $5 or $6 this week, no matter who I want? Like, are there still, with $100, do you feel like you still have enough to throw out like a $20 bid if there's someone that you want that you think you can get for that number? Like, what's the approach from here to the rest of the season?
Yeah, no, I'm in like dollar days right now. The max I'll go is, $3 or $4 on a guy if I think someone's going to put in 1 or 2 even. But my rule of thumb really is like, I want to have like around $50, give or take, for the end of the season, whether it's end of August through September. If you give me $50 for that, I'll manage, which is still a ways off. So, I'm probably down to $50, $60 until then, right? So, I mean, any of these guys, these high price pickups, I'll be in 0 of those winning circles. But to me, I mean, I've built these teams, especially the main. I say this often too, is, you win your leagues, I feel like, in the mains at the draft table, right? I mean, it's hard to improve your team in the main a ton throughout the league. You'll get an Elly, right, who's a difference maker for sure. But for the most part, I mean, 15-team leagues, I mean, you have to build a winner at the table, I feel like. And whereas the 12s, you could definitely have a little more leeway there. And, you can miss a lot more in the 12s, especially at the draft. and you can improve a lot easier throughout the season. But the main event, I mean, if you don't draft a winner at the table, you're likely going to not cash at the end of the year. That's just been my take or experience there.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You at least need sort of the foundation of your team, like the key pieces on the hitting and pitching side, and then your good ads in season, they could push you to like another level. But not
to cut you off, the main that we're in together in Vegas, that was my favorite main by far of all three of them. And my draft, I mean, if you look at it, is like this kind of illustrates the point I was just talking about. Or I'm 8th overall, whatever. It's middle of the pack. But I started. Let me see. That's where I went cold DeGrom. I took Jazz as well in that league. O'Neal Cruz.
Yeah, I remember you got DeGrom. That was like an all risk team.
Yeah, it's already and exactly. This is what happens when you draft a team like that. But Buxton, I got Jazz, Lodolo's in there, O'Neal Cruz. Like I said, I mean, I had like 6 of my top 8 picks are either they're hurt or they're done for the season. So it's like if you draft that in a main event, I mean, I'm just trying to get a third. And you guys, I see you guys sitting in third there. I mean, I'm just eyeing. See, this is a league where I'm not even looking at the overall, and like it's around 400.
The overall's gone.
Overall's gone. I'm 400th place. It's middle of June, middle of the league. I'm just trying to cash here. So I'm just trying to maximize my output at bats, pitching and whatnot, and see if I could cash. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of illustrates that point is where, if you draft a team like this and you're going to suffer the consequences on the downside for sure.
Do you approach FAAB any differently, like in terms of dollars? Like, so when you were doing your Taj Bradley bids in the 12s versus the main, how different are you approaching the dollar figure for a Taj Bradley bid, or is it just kind of the same?
No, I think they're different, actually. Yeah, I think the mains, you are more aggressive with the higher end pickups, where Taj Bradley was probably going in some OCs for like less than $100. Where in the mains, he was right around 300, give or take, in every main, I'm sure. So, yeah, it's just overall, the OCs are less aggressive on the wire. You do have to manage your budgets a little differently in both formats, and that's why I'm okay in OCs with a lower bankroll. Is like I can get guys that I need for $1 or $2 versus the main. You got the guys you need probably around $15, $16 or low 20s a lot of weeks. So that's another thing. It's just easier to maneuver the waiver wire in the online championship.
All right, so now we're going to talk a bit more about kind of specific players, and I want to kind of look ahead to sort of how they might be valued heading into next year. What I know you didn't have the scratch to get Elly anywhere, but
well, I have him. So it's funny. I have him in kind of a big spot actually. So it's the contract league. Were you familiar with that in Vegas?
I've never done that.
Really cool. It was the first time I've done it. I was invited. It was it's essentially where you pay like actual cash for the top 100 players according to like their contracts. But it's only for like the top 100 that have like the money assigned to them, right? So a guy like Verlander was like $430 or whatever. So he fell to like the 6th or 7th round or something because people don't want to drop, $500 on a pitcher, real money. So it kind of creates that unique kind of variable where I took like Jazz for $60 in the first round, guys like that. And Julio was like the number 1 pick because he's getting paid like nothing this year. So it was very cheap, cash wise. So anyway, after those top 100 you pay for, then it goes into like a regular snake draft or whatnot. And I ended up taking Elly in like round 32, 33, something like that. But there's no FAAB. So you hold on to it's almost like a DC. And then we have one supplemental draft, which is actually after the All-Star break. So there's no FAAB moves for the entire time. So no pickups. And then we have another 10-round draft, I believe. So a lot of times you're playing guys, that your whole roster is hurt, like a DC would be, but you can't make any moves. So it's an interesting dynamic for sure. So I was playing Gary Sanchez as my DH for like 3 weeks because, I didn't have any healthy active bats on my bench. So it's pretty cool.
So you got Elly there. What have you seen from him? And if you had like a crystal ball here, what are we talking? First rounder next year? Does he go through any stretch of struggles that would move him out of that range?
Boy, first round. I mean, it's possible, man. I know O'Neal Cruz is people are comping him too. I don't know what your thoughts are there versus the two players, but you do see a lot of similarities. Just the crazy athleticism, the speed, the power. It's like, I don't know, is the batting average floor kind of scary with him? What are your thoughts as far as like his batting average?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's kind of a more
Polished,
sort of actualized version of Cruz.
Yeah.
Like I think he's got more game power. They might have like similar raw power. Elly's just better at getting to it consistently in games and might be even more aggressive on the bases. I haven't double checked that to be the case.
He's feeling like a bag every game, it seems to already.
But yeah, I mean, like, he's got a 39% strikeout rate. That's not that surprising, at least like in his first week or whatever. But, I mean, there's a reason he wasn't like coming into the year. He wasn't even the third ranked prospect behind Corbin Carroll or Gunnar Henderson by pretty much anyone. Maybe somebody had him ranked third, but like there was enough swing and miss concerns there. Like people that rank prospects like knew about the power and the speed, obviously. But there were enough concerns about the hit tool where he was more just kind of a middle, the top 10 type of prospect coming into the year.
Yeah. And that would be why I would guess, I don't know if you would see him in the first round next year just because of that one category. It's like, but I mean, you mentioned Carroll. I mean, and I think we're gonna talk to like the draft the top 3 or top of the draft next year. I mean, I think he's number 2. It's gonna be. I mean, him and Ohtani are probably. I think it's Acuna, obviously, and then there's a little drop off. But Corbin Carroll. I mean, I was looking at his numbers yesterday. He's not that far off of where Acuna is right now. He's about 10 steals less, but everything else is pretty much where Acuna is right now.
Yeah. So my assignment I gave you was like, we assume it's Acuna. And then I guess just to wrap things up on Elly, like I kind of thrown out first round as just to get your reaction to that. But I would say still like I wouldn't be surprised if he was going anywhere from like third or fourth round to middle of the first round.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And we'll see where things go. I mean,
plus the ballpark. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, O'Neal Cruz had a big ceiling. I mean, this kid, if he's playing in that ballpark half his games, jeez, yeah. I don't think he makes it out of like a second round of a main next year, if he,
And I think that would benefit Cruz actually more. Like I think Elly De La Cruz just hits like so many of his are just absolute no doubters, whereas like O'Neal Cruz I think hits enough kind of like opposite field line drives that he could really take advantage of that better ballpark there. But yeah, so we got Acuna, like the legend. Todd and I, of course, got him third overall in that league.
Oh man, yeah.
So we third place in that league should be our.
Who went top 2? Was it Trey that went ahead of?
It was Trey and Julio.
Oh my gosh! Talk about a gift at 3. My God.
Hey, I'll take a gift at 3. But he'll be number 1 unless he gets injured again. But Yeah, so like you thinking Corbin Carroll versus Ohtani would be kind of how you handicap it for.
Yeah, I think you kind of splitting hairs with those two, but yeah, I think Carroll. I mean, he's been incredible this year. So yeah, I think he's going to be the Julio of next year for sure. He's the easy top 5 pick in my eyes, and we see with Judge. This is the Judge issue, which I had concerns with going into the year, and even when I took him to Maine, I was a little bit concerned. It's just, this guy does get hurt, right? Last year, he was an Ironman. He was playing, for that big money. Not to say that he's not really hurt, but I think he probably fought through a lot of things last year that he wouldn't ordinarily fight through if he wasn't, in this big contract year. So, but nonetheless, we'll see how much time he misses. But, if it's considerable, you might not see him in the top 5. Maybe the end of the first-ish next year. But I think the speed guys with power, Carroll, Ohtani, and Acuna at 1, those are probably the top 3 if I had to handicap it today. And pitching, I don't know if you see a pitcher in the first round next year after what we're seeing, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough to predict the main event starting pitching landscape until you kind of get there that weekend almost, like.
But I feel like this year is just like, I mean, it's unlike years in past where, you had aces that were reliable you could throw out there. It's just so few of them, I feel like, this year. And maybe that moves them up the boards, those few guys, and everybody waits on the rest. That could happen. But, I mean, I don't know. I think this is going to affect people for next year in terms of their attack.
Did you get Ohtani anywhere this year?
I don't think I have any Ohtani, to be honest. And it's not because I wasn't targeting him. It's just I felt like I missed out on him a lot. And if I picked it, on the top of the draft, I was never looking at him. If I was around 8, 9, 10, somebody was taking him before me. So I wasn't fading the guy. But yeah, he just didn't fall to me in any spots. And like I said, I had Acuna at 1 where I had him. If I had the 1 pick, I was going to Acuna. Julio, I was taking ahead of him everywhere. So it's just, yeah, if I could have that back, I would definitely have more Ohtani for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's when I got to Vegas this year, a bunch of smart people, DiPietro, Mark Winokur were like selling me on their Ohtani plan. Like basically they were there just to execute their Ohtani plan. And I just wasn't really, they kind of like sold me on it, but it was like too late in the game for me to go there. But I had my JD Martinez plan, and Ohtani would have messed that up. So
it's the whole thing with the pitching, and it's just, everyone kind of goes right to that. You have the option to do both, but it's like, if you're going to play him primarily as a batter, as a hitter, right, you don't want to be taking him ahead of another hitter that you think is going to outproduce him in the hitting categories. Even though you have the luxury of pitching Ohtani, if you want Ohtani the hitter and then add in the utility only, you shouldn't be taking him ahead of a Julio Rodriguez if you had Julio ahead of him offensively. So I understood why he fell in drafts to a certain degree. So, but yeah, nobody saw. I mean, people were using him as a pitcher early just so they avoid the blowups. So you had the best of both worlds.
I think what I underestimated, I guess, before sort of hearing them out was just the, because I always viewed him as like, I'm going to use this guy as a hitter 90-95% of the time. But I think maybe we overestimate kind of knowing exactly what we have on our team leaving the draft. And so it's nice to have someone who, say we get to July, you can just be like, you know what, this team needs pitching,
right?
Or
you have that, right? You have that luxury,
so you can like pivot. And it's almost like you're adding an elite player at the other side of the spectrum or whatever.
Or if he plays he has like a 5-game week, he's facing a couple really tough lefties. You're kind of lacking in pitching. Okay, that's an easy choice. Just start him that week and pitcher. So I get it. I get the allure of it, and making. I totally understand it. It's just when you're forced to make that call over, some guys you have in your mind higher on the offensive side of the ball, it's a tough pick sometimes.
So how about I want to just get your take on him since he's a Met. Francisco Alvarez.
Oof.
This is kind of who I thought he'd be in like 2 years. But he's just kind of doing it already. And I know he's only hitting 236, but he's still a top 5 catcher by earned auction dollars. 12 home runs. That's right there with Sean Murphy and tied for second among catchers. Only Sal Perez has more. So we're not talking about a Jonah Heim level legend at the position, but what do you see, as someone who sees a lot of Alvarez, like where does this kind of go the rest of the season? Are they how good is the defense? Are they okay DHing him a bunch? And sort of what do you see him doing sort of as an encore next year?
Well, first off, defensively, he's pretty good. I know there was a lot of skepticism around his defense early on, but I mean, he could play the position. I think he's actually like a plus defender. He's getting better every day. Offensively, I mean, you see it, man. This guy's got a quick bat. He's got that fire in him. I mean, he's a baller. I mean, this kid's going to be, he's going to be a top 3 or 4 fantasy catcher for the next, he's going to be name your slugging cat. I can't even put a comp on him because he's so unique. I feel like he's just electric. His bat is electric. You see it fly off the bat. I mean, he's going to hit high in the lineup, moving forward. He's going to get you the runs. He's got the power. I think the average too will be there. He's got upside there. I mean, he's got it all. I mean, this is why he was the number 1 overall prospect, right? I don't know if he was number 1 on your board, but I mean, well,
I didn't rank him anywhere near there for overall. I didn't think he was like an Adley level, 0 weaknesses type of guy, and I thought he would just be kind of a 250 hitter with 30 homer power. And to me, that's not like a top 10 type of prospect for Dynasty,
right?
Just because it's not the hardest thing to find. And there's so many good young catchers, but I think I was too low on him just based on it clicking this quickly for him.
He has like a good approach up there. He knows, he's comfortable sitting there. He doesn't look like he's, a 21-year-old rookie up there. So, I mean, he looks the part, man, and just watching, he's fun to watch. So, yeah, I think he's going to be a fun player to watch for years to come.
So, is he the type of guy, I love talking about sophomores and guys heading into their 3rd year where if a guy's coming off a good year, there's going to be an increased price tag, and a lot of people will just be like, well, it's no longer a value. I'm moving on to the next guy. Is this a case where you think the market on him is going to be fair, or could he be overpriced because he's a Met? Would it be impossible to overprice him?
Boy, I mean, I still wouldn't, put him over JTR, next year, even Murphy, if he finishes the year strong. Adley, I mean, you're probably getting, the higher bit. You're not probably most likely getting the higher batting average, but I think, like you said, he could hit 30, 35 homers. He's going to score a ton of runs. He's going to DH plenty. Narvaez is going to catch. They're fine DHing Alvarez. So you're getting pretty much an everyday slugger at the catcher position, playing in what should be a good lineup most years. But yeah, I mean, he's probably going to be, I don't know, 3rd, 4th, 5th catcher off the boards next year, I want to say. Probably where Sal Perez went this year, around 60, 70, if I had to guess.
I think him versus Sal is interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of what kind of fantasy player I think he's going to become is, hit 250, 260, 35 homer upside, 100 RBIs, that kind of thing. So, I mean, he's going to give you huge counting stats, and probably at an average that's not going to hurt you. So that's, for a catcher, that's worth a lot.
Where are you on Brett Beatty? Quickly, like I liked Beatty a tiny bit more than Alvarez as a prospect, but obviously he hasn't jumped out quite as quickly as Alvarez has.
Yeah, he's struggled for sure. I mean, he's had spurts where, you definitely see the glimpses of just a guy that could hit you 300, 25, 30 homers and just kind of spray it all around the field. And then at times he's looked kind of lost at the plate, especially of late. So I think there's some growing pains there, and kind of, not unlike other rookies, it might take some time with him, but maybe, another year or two, I could see him kind of like a middle of the order bat and like a slugging third baseman with decent average, good power, definitely a guy that could help your fantasy teams, but I don't know if he's going to be, a special player. I'll put it that way.
I know I gave you like a list of guys we might talk about. We're running kind of low on time. Was there anyone who really jumped out that you wanted to kind of talk about at all?
I think we talked. Let me see. There were a couple of guys you mentioned here. We mentioned Kalanick, Adolis Garcia, who, is Josh Lowe, another guy. See, a lot of these guys, well, especially Josh Lowe, he's the second year, the post-hype sleeper, It's like, it's definitely something to pay attention to, I think, moving forward, is these high pedigree guys that struggle early, take that chance on them in drafts, right? If you're getting a good price on them, because a lot of times these guys can hit in year 2, year 3, where, they were pretty bad their rookie years. So, I think we touched on most of the players, though.
Yeah, I mean, like looking ahead to next year, maybe that's Anthony Volpe.
Exactly.
That's Tristan Casas. I'm not as bullish on Casas's. Like I think I'd kind of like Volpe to just keep being bad the rest of the year and not give anyone like some sort of thing to point to in their off-season prep, like other than just that this guy had pedigree.
But that's a great example. Yeah. I mean, if he continues on, if he stays up here and, he hits 208 at the end of the season, that might be a good guy to target. And, if he's a nice discount there. So players like that, those are the guys I'm always eyeing and just trying to find that value for these super talented guys. So.
Well, this was a ton of fun, Andrew. It was cool chatting with you for an extended period of time. I know it's in Vegas. I feel like I never get nearly enough time talking with everyone. So glad we got to do this, man.
Yeah, James, thanks so much, man. It was great meeting you in person, and it was really cool putting all the faces to the Twitter names and the Twitter handles. So I'll be out there again next year. I don't know if you're heading out again, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And you need more. Why don't you have more Twitter followers?
I don't know. I think the older, younger guilds, I was a little more combative with people, and
you like to mix it up.
Yeah, I like to mix it up now. It's more of the chill guilds, and so. But I don't know. People, I honestly, I never thought I would have this many followers. To be honest with you,
all the overall success has mellowed you out,
I guess. And that's the thing too. It's like if I do well again, it's like this. I don't know how much longer I can do this for. I mean, it's very time consuming, right? I have 2 kids, it's a family. It's like a lot of stuff going on. Sundays in the summer, man, it drains you, right? Fantasy baseball is a grind, unlike no other. So we'll see. If I back it up with another overall, I might just ride off into the sunset and
retirement alert.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'll say that, at the end, and March comes and I'm back in the OCs drafting again. So
yeah, well, maybe you upped the number of OCs you were in this year.
Yeah.
And now you're complaining about it.
Which I told myself, I wouldn't do. And there was just one more. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Let's do one more. And it was actually an Acuna. It was who I started out with: Acuna, DeGrom, Strider. It was my first 3 there. I had high hopes about a month ago with that team, but not so much now.
All right, buddy. Well, really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone for tuning in.